This book is called A Sled Dog for Moshi by Jean Bushy and illustrated by Germaine Arnatoyak. This is a great book to promote cultural identity because it highlights life in Iqaluit through the relationship between a little girl from New York and an Inuk girl from Iqaluit. I'll be looking at this book through the lens of comprehension strategies. So the first page of the book, I see a map. And on the map, first thing I see is the North Pole. And I also see two red dots. One is in New York in the United States, and one is Iqaluit in Canada. So this story is taking place in one of these two places, I can assume. I wish I had a dog like Tippy, Moshi said as she held her friend Jessica's new puppy in her arms. She gave the small white terrier a quick hug before handing him back to Jessica. Don't you have your own dog? Jessica asked. I saw lots of dogs in the pen beside your house. Those are my dad's sled dogs, Moshi said. Inuit dogs aren't pets. They're used for racing mostly, although some of the men in our village still use dog teams instead of snowmobiles for hunting. If you had a sled dog for a pet, he could take us for rides, Jessica exclaimed. And I'm sure we could teach him to do tricks the way Tippy can. So there's a little white terrier, Tippy. But I also see other dogs up here, so I'm guessing those are sled dogs because they're pulling a sled. And they look pretty big, a lot bigger than Tippy. Moshi was not surprised that Jessica did not understand about sled dogs. Jessica was from New York City and had moved to the remote northern village of Iqaluit only a few months ago. Moshi watched Tippy dancing on his hind feet. He seemed so clever. Inuit dogs could only pull sleds. More than anything in the world, Moshi wanted a dog like Tippy. Our lead dog's gonna have pups soon, Moshi announced. Maybe I could have one of them. She brushed her hair back from her face. I'm gonna ask my dad for one as soon as I get home. When Moshi walked in the back door of her house, she found her father standing in the middle of the kitchen. Melting snow dripped from his sealskin boots, called kamiks, onto the floor. His mittened hand held a pair of frozen fish for the dogs. My dog doesn't eat frozen fish. Does yours? Nuna's gone, her father said angrily. I went out to feed the dog, and she wasn't there. Don't worry, Moshi's mother said gently as she held Moshi's youngest brother on her lap. She'll be back in the morning when she's hungry. You've had dogs get away before. Her father frowned. I don't want anything to happen to her. She's my best dog, and her pups will be born soon. Those pups will be worth a lot of money someday. Do we have to sell all the pups this time? Moshi blurted out. Her father looked puzzled. I might keep one or two for my team. Why do you ask, little one? Moshi looked up and said, I would like one for a pet, like Jessica's new puppy. Ah, so you want a plaything dog like your friend has, Moshi's father said quietly. Her little dog is so small it could be a cat. Nuna's pups won't be like that. They will grow into strong sled dogs, not dogs that do tricks. He sighed. I'm sorry, but it would be a waste of a good dog. Moshi was disappointed, but she hoped her father might change his mind once Nuna returned. When several days passed and still the dog had not come home, Moshi felt sad for her father. She knew that Nuna was his favorite. Every afternoon when school was over, Moshi and Jessica played with Tippy. They dressed him in a doll's sweater and took him outside, where he walked warily across the snowy ground. When Tippy got cold, they brought him inside and rolled his ball for him to chase. Moshi thought Tippy was the smartest dog she had ever seen. The following week, spring returned to Iqaluit. The sun shone with real warmth for the first time since the long, cold winter had ended. The snow began to melt, and water ran in wide streams along the gravelly earth. Tiny flowers sprang up in patches among the rocks, dotting the tundra with color. This book has a glossary at the back, and I don't know what tundra means, so I'm going to see if it's in the glossary. Tundra. These regions of the northern hemisphere have no trees and an abundant outcropping of rock. In summer, flowering dwarf shrubs grow in thin, wet soil that is spread over permanently frozen ground underneath. On Saturday, the girls sat on the steps outside Jessica's house. Tippy can't play outside today. He'd get too dirty in all this mud. How about going exploring instead? She pointed to a high ridge behind her house. We could go up on those rocks. The girls climbed to the top of the ridge where they could see far out over the frozen bay. They watched the changing shadows on the ice made by small clouds drifting across the sun. Jessica climbed over the ridge and started down toward the bay, picking handfuls of fluffy white blossoms that grew among the rocks. What are these flowers called? Jessica asked. They look just like dandelions. They're called Arctic cotton, Moshi replied, but you won't find many flowers down by the ice. Let's go home now. I'm hungry. The warm spring day had disappeared. A large layer of gray clouds formed. It's going to snow. We'd better hurry, she urged. That's crazy, Jessica laughed. It doesn't snow in May. That's not true here. When there's a whiteout, it snows so much you can't even see where you're going. It can come out of nowhere this time of year. She turned back the way they had come. Snowflakes began to fall, and the ground was quickly covered with a thick layer of white. The wind blew fiercely from all directions, and the falling snow stung like sharp stones as it struck the girls' faces. Moshi, wait, Jessica called anxiously. I can hardly see you anymore. Moshi shielded her eyes from the snow. She grabbed one of Jessica's bare hands. Where are your mittens? She asked with concern. I didn't bring any, Jessica answered. I didn't know it was going to snow. Here, wear one of mine. Keep your other hand in your pocket, Moshi said. It'll help a little. She strained to see ahead. I think this is the way over here. Moshi pulled Jessica along behind her. She now had no sense of where they were. She couldn't see anything. The howling wind blocked out all other sounds. She knew stories of people who got turned around in whiteouts and walked in the wrong direction. Without warning, a large, dark shape jumped up against Moshi's chest. Nuna, our lead dog! Then Nuna tugged on the sleeve of Moshi's parka. I think she wants us to come with her, Moshi said. The girls followed along behind the dog. Nuna ran ahead and then returned, barking sharply. Nuna barked again and crawled through a hole in the skirting around the base of the building that appeared. Moshi and Jessica followed on their hands and knees. Underneath the shed, they were safe from the storm. Brush off your clothes, Moshi said. If the snow melts on you and then freezes again, you'll be even colder. She carefully wiped all the traces of snow off her parka and turned to help Jessica. I wonder why it would be colder if the snow melts and freezes again. Where are we? Jessica asked. Why did Nuna bring us here? I think this is one of the storage sheds on the edge of town where we keep frozen meat and fish, Moshi answered. But I don't know why Nuna took us here instead of home. Jessica, look! Nuna's pups! That's why she didn't take us home. She has her pups under here. Moshi touched the nearest little head. The pup turned toward her, his eyes still closed. He pressed his cold nose into the palm of her hand. I'll name you Siku, Moshi laughed. That means ice, and your nose is as cold as ice. Carefully, Jessica picked up a second puppy. They're so cute, she said. Moshi reached over to pet Nuna, who stretched out her head and licked Moshi's hand. A yellow plastic rope was tied around her neck. Its broken end hung down her back. Look, Moshi cried. Someone must have tied her up. I bet they wanted to keep her pups, but she broke free. I guess she couldn't get home in time to give birth, so she stopped here. Moshi stroked the fur on Nuna's head. I'm glad Nuna found us, Jessica said. But how are we going to get home? She buried her face in her puppy's fur and started to cry. Please don't cry, Jessica, Moshi said as she wiped away Jessica's tears with her mittened hand. Your tears will freeze. Any 3-year-old in Nook knows that, she said. Moshi reached into her pocket. Look, we've even got food. Here's some bannock my mother baked this morning. I don't know what bannock is. Maybe it's in the glossary too. Bannock. Flat bread made from flour, salt, water, and baking powder that's similar in flavor to a scone. It was probably introduced to the Inuit by Scottish and English fur traders and whalers. As the girls huddled together, Nuna approached Moshi, then barked and darted outside. Both girls turned to watch the hole, but the dog did not return. "She's running away again." "She didn't run away in the first place. She would never do that," Moshi said sharply, defending the dog. "We'll just have to wait here with the pups until the storm is over," she added more patiently. The girls huddled next to the puppies. After a few minutes, Jessica fell asleep. As the light under the building faded almost completely, Moshi knew that the afternoon had passed. Soon it would be dark and very cold under the shed. The roar of snowmobiles interrupted her thoughts. Moshi heard a dog barking and men calling. "Jessica, wake up," Moshi cried. "Someone's coming." It seemed as if everything happened at once. Nuna bounded through the hole, barking loudly. Moshi's father peered under the building. He saw the girls and shouted, "They're here! They're all right!" Moshi and Jessica climbed out through the hole. Moshi's father hugged both girls tightly. The other men helped carry the pups out. "Nuna saved us," Moshi said, looking at the big dog with a new appreciation for her abilities. "Did you see the rope? Someone tried to keep her, but she broke free." "The police will check into it later," her father answered. "They've been pretty busy the last few hours looking for 2 little girls who were foolish enough to go out in a whiteout." He looked sternly down at Moshi while Jessica climbed onto the komatik, the long sled behind the snowmobile. "Your friend doesn't know any better, but you do." "It's not Moshi's fault," Jessica said. "The whiteout came so fast we couldn't get back from the ridge." "I tried to remember the things you taught me when we went camping in the winter," Moshi said, looking up at her father. "I'm proud of you, little one. You thought like an Inuk," her father replied. "But I've been thinking that if you have had a good dog with you today, perhaps this would not have happened. Is there one of Nuna's pups you would like for a pet?" "Oh, yes," Moshi said. She pointed to Siku. "This is the one I want, but I don't want him to be a pet to do tricks. I want him to be a sled dog just like his mother." The end.